Performance advertisers who optimize for app installs. History shows your costs are going to be going up in the month of November. In this episode of the Paid Traffic Forecast, we're going to go through exactly what the forecast shows, the hot spots and cold spots you and your team need to pay attention to, what their projection models say is likely to happen to your P&L based off what you focus on, and the 3 things you can do to maximize your results in spite of higher costs. More on that right after this. Hey there, and welcome to the November 2025 Paid Traffic Forecast for App Install Advertisers. My name is John Belcher. I'm the founder here at Decyphered. That's Ross Pietersen, the head of media buying, and we're excited to walk you through what your campaigns will look like over the next 30 days. Quick overview of what we do here at Decyphered. We help our clients understand and win at the scaling game. Paid traffic is a game, and our focus is to unlock the next level of scale by doing the right things. The key to long-term success is understanding your cost environment. It has a huge impact on your results, and that's why we created this forecast. In this episode, we're going to walk you through 4 different things. First, the November outlook, what the last 5 years tells us is likely in store for you as an app install advertiser. Second, the hot spots and cold spots. Ross is going to walk you through specific dates and the do's and the don'ts in those timeframes. I'm going to walk you through the projection models to tell you what your numbers could look like depending on what you focus on. And finally, I'm going to give you 3 plays in our cost environment playbook to help you maximize your results and or prepare for the future. So let's start with the November outlook. I want to give you a quick background on how this forecast was created. My job is to help our clients put together P&L projections so they understand what is likely to result from their paid traffic efforts. To do this, I went and studied the 5-year meta historicals to look at CPM trends for hundreds of millions of dollars in spend across the 4 major conversion types. Then I put together a projection model and tested it and found we could project within about 5% of actual results for clients spending $1 million or more or month in ad spend. What's important for you to understand is while Meta is our data set, these percentages apply to Meta, Google Native, and it's starting to apply to AppLovin as more advertisers are coming on board. We've proven that these numbers stand across these platforms. And finally, and you need to know this is a forecast, not a prophecy, we're looking at the averages of what has happened in the past. These averages hold pretty true, but things change on a year-to-year basis. So our goal is to show you what's likely to happen so you can focus on paying attention to the times that really matter. What's really important for you to understand about me is people call me Johnny Raincloud because I'm always focused on the worst case scenario, and that's exactly how I built this forecast. I've looked at month-over-month changes and developed a worst case, median case, and best case model. All we're going to focus on this forecast is the worst case. If we prepare for the worst, our only surprise can be overperforming. So the worst case scenario for you as an app install advertiser is a month-over-month change. We're expecting no more than an increase of 21% in your cost per installs, but that's a pretty big deal. Now, what's important for you to understand is this is macro information is valuable for P&L planning, which I'll get into in the projections section, but it's not very usable when navigating the day-to-day. What you really need to be able to see there is the micro change for media buying so you can anticipate what's coming up and focus on taking the right actions. And that's where Ross has gone through, and we've done this on a day-by-day basis so we can understand what are the changes that are going to be taking place over the course of the month to help you prepare accordingly. So Ross, let's dive into the hot spots and the cold spots.
Perfect. So just before we dive in, just a quick overview in terms of what hotspots and cold spots are. These are just short-term cost swings. So a hotspot is a rapid cost spike going up, and a cold spot is a rapid cost drop going down. Both create a lot of volatility that needs to be managed, not something you can fix. Okay, so let's have a look at the 2 dates we've outlined for app install advertisers for the month of November. The one is really early in the month, 31st of October. We're diving right into it from the get-go. And then the other one is right at the end of the month on the 28th of November. Both of these we've indicated as cold spots. So let's have a look at what the heat map looks like. So as you can see right at the start, we're diving in, we're seeing a massive cost drop from October into November. So that's the first one. And you can see as you go through the month, there's a consistent increase, and it's a pretty steady increase through the month all the way up until we get to the end where we hit the 28th, and then there's a massive cost drop towards the end of the month. So this is pretty good looking in comparison with some of the other conversion events, but at the end of the day, there is some volatility along the way. Let's go ahead and have a quick look at what a cold spot looks like. So the first thing we're going to see is some some overspend, because the cost environment is changing. You're going to see this lowering of costs, and all of a sudden your budgets are going to overspend. What that creates for all advertisers, whether you're using cost controls or not, is a lot of instability. That's what you're going to need to expect. So let's have a look at a real life example of what that would look like. So when I'm running an account for our clients, we're monitoring all our campaigns on a daily basis. So you'll see here in the screenshot where this is just from a day's performance, and you'll see on the right hand side is a budget utilization percentage, and you'll see all of those, and many of them are over 100%. So what that would look like in a very simple example is if you're spending $100 on a campaign and there was overspend, you would be spending more than 100% of that budget. And in this case, we're seeing 120, 130% usage. So what's happening here is there's a change of cost environments. All of a sudden, costs are dropping, and there's this big downhill spiral, and we're seeing a massive overspend. Now, this could be seen as a good thing, but it's actually not so great. You're seeing high volatility. These are costs you can't control. You can't pull them back if you don't want to. So this is what this looks like in a real world example. Let's quickly have a look at what the do's and don'ts are. So as I said, there are two. There's one on the 31st, right in the beginning, 31st of October, and one at the end. What we want to avoid is there's a high risk of extending a recovery period, so trying to get back control, and completely ruining your entire account's performance and stability. Two things you have to do and always keep in mind. One, monitoring that budget utilization and seeing when that overspend happens. And the other thing is, depending whether you're internal team or working with clients, is communicate with your team, communicate with your clients. This is what's going to happen. Here's two things you don't want to do. Make big changes to your budget, and also rescale old performers too quickly. So essentially rebuilding and scaling up to these original budgets. If you're a cost control advertiser, so those of you who are using bid caps, cost cap, target, CPA, those kinds of things, the other thing you don't want to do is changing those bids, especially in these times of transition. You're going to add on more volatility and change elements in this time of transition. Really, really bad mistake to be doing that.
So the one thing I want to jump in here really quickly from a strategic perspective, the reason we put this don't rescale old performers too quickly, this is my mistake I've asked Ross to do multiple times, so I want to give you context. Whenever we've come out of a hot spot, we're seeing lower costs. I've told Ross, hey, let's go relaunch those ads that died, and let's start them at the budget that they were at. And that never performs. It's if we had an ad, we're using demand gen, target CPA, and it was running at $2,000. Hey, Ross, go start at $2,000. Never works. We always have to go back, relaunch them, start them at our initial testing budget, and then work our way back up. So what's really important for you to understand is, whether this is your internal team or you're working with clients, communicating, hey, we're going to be able to relaunch some old creatives that worked in the past but dropped off due to higher costs, but it's going to take us a few days to rescale everything. That's extremely important to understand and work through. Otherwise, you're just going to see, once again, massive volatility. Things that used to work don't work because you're starting them at too high of a level. So once again, just follow your process.
Perfect. So those are the do's and don'ts for a cold spot. Let's have a quick look at macro trends. So these are things that affect all advertisers, irrelevant of the optimization event you're optimizing for. So in this case, app installs. And these are things where big brand advertisers or, election situation come into play in their running campaigns. These things affect all advertisers because these big brand guys are buying up all these impressions. They're using CPMs as opposed to conversion like us performance advertisers. And because they're doing that, they're buying up impressions which we can't get. So what we do is indicate every month, what are these events, what's likely to happen in the month of November. We've got a couple of them. One is the elections early in the month of November. So if you're seeing volatility at that point in time, that's probably a good idea to have a look and say, is it around that period of time, 4th, 5th, 6th? At the end of the month as well, we've got our normal, we expect those big dumps, but we've also got Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday happening towards the end of the month. So these things, irrelevant of what you're doing, there's a huge amounts of spend and advertising budgets being spent at the end of this month. So keep a lookout for that. These are ones that you've really got to keep your eyes open for. irrelevant of whether you're in app installs or whatever, these are very likely to affect your performance through the month.
And one thing to layer onto this is typically we see Black Friday is starting like the 24th or 5th, maybe the 6th of November. This year it's on the 28th. And so we talk about it's a forecast, not a prophecy. The specifics of the dates this year could shift this graph back a day or two, which is why we always put plus or minus on the dates that you're looking for. It's just really important to note this. It's a later date for Black Friday, Cyber Monday as we head into November. So we could see the way that this is looking at the average of the last 5 years, this whole graph could shift a couple days. And it's important to understand that to know when these fall offs might take place. Thanks, Ross, so much for walking us through that. All right, so my turn now to talk about the projection models, what we could potentially see with the P&L. My goal when doing projections is first to view what's the CPM impact on the results going to be. So what does this cost environment mean for our overall P&L? A couple variables that we consider. Number one is the number of selling days. So November has one fewer days than selling days than October. So if we're trying to match the performance of last month, we have to take into account we have one fewer selling days. And the second thing is, do you have historical data that shows a difference in conversion rate changes? That may be something that's negative or positive, but it's important to factor that in when you're building projections to understand what's actually going to happen. So I try and boil this down to performance by day last month, multiplied by the number of selling days this month, and then we may adjust the overall conversion rate. And that's how we kind of get to that final result. So our result is our evergreen production. What can we expect from our evergreen proven base of campaigns to produce? And then what we do is look at it compared to the goals for the company. So if we're saying, hey, there's going to be a 21% increase, that means we're probably going to have a delta compared to what we were able to produce last month. And so it's going to be important to determine the monthly focuses. Where are we placing our efforts and how risky should our actions be? So what I want to quickly talk about is, I know you don't care about CPMs, you care about cost per install and revenue, but I want to explain why this is important. If you spend $100,000 in the month of October and you spend that same $100,000 in the month of November, you're going to reach 21% fewer people. And you go, well, all I care is about cost per install, John, why does this matter? Because how this actually works is most people think that their funnels start, whether it be click to install or you got a landing page, they think their funnels start here. It actually starts with your impressions. So when you're spending more and you're reaching fewer people, you're going to have fewer clicks, fewer installs, fewer activations, fewer purchases, which means worse ROI for the same amount of spend. Just really important for you to understand that. So how I go through and I develop projections is I build a spreadsheet that I look at the production of last month. So if we say we spent $100,000, it's $3 cost per install, we're making $6 per install, and we generate revenue of $200,000 with a 2.0 ROAS. Then I build three models. What happens if we just maintain spend? So we're just absorbing the cost environment change. Like I said, it's going to go up 21%, which means we're going to have about 6,000 fewer installs. $35,000 less revenue, and our ROAS is going to drop. And that's if we change nothing. If all we do is absorb the cost change. If our client says, hey, we can't afford to have fewer installs, we're going to have to push into higher CPMs to maintain our volume. I call this peeing into the wind. We're going to have to spend $146,000 to generate that same number of installs, because at 100, we've already lost that number of installs. Now we're going to have to go pay more for that additional volume, which is going to drop. Our revenue is going to stay the same, but our ROAS is going to drop by 67 or 63 points. It's a big deal, right? Massive drop in ROAS if we have to push for volume. And then the final one is if the company says, hey, we can't afford a higher cost per install, we're going to have to pull back on our spend. And in this scenario, we're pulling back $32,000 in spend. And this is a best case scenario, because as you start to reduce your budgets so you can maintain your cost per conversion, you're actually going to lose out on some auctions. So this is basically saying if we don't lose out on any auctions and we just pull back on our spend, 68,000 is probably the most that we're going to be able to spend. And while our ROAS is going to stay the same, we're going to drop our revenue by $63,000. So basically, when you head into a higher cost environment, you're always going to have a delta. The question is the delta going to be revenue, profit, or both? And that's what these three scenarios model out. Okay. So the conclusion we can take away from this is, since costs are going up, results are going down, we have to take actions to make up this delta. And that's the focus of our cost environment playbook for the month of November for app install advertisers. So every month I want to try and give you 3 things that you can focus on to either maximize your results now and or prepare for the future. These are all talking about how do we maximize results right now. When I look at these, there's 3 things that we can do, starting with the highest lift plays, moving to middle lift, and then low lift. So I want to talk through strategic PR efforts, targeted CRO testing, and proven angle iterations are the 3 plays that I want to talk about how we would run these. I always try and do this with an example brand. I'm going to use Chime Banking. I've done this with fintech apps in the past. You may have a game where all you have is ads straight to install and like that's your whole funnel. And you may not be able to use these because there's not a value prop associated with them. But I'm trying to take this from the perspective of what my experience has been. And that's why I chose to go down this path. So the first one is a strategic PR outreach. I am not a fan, and I'm sure any performance marketer. I remember the founder of Y Combinator said like one of our biggest dead money events or things that we've done in the past is hiring PR agencies, and I agree with that. I've never seen the ROI back out, but you can do this on your own, and it can be a good strategic investment. And so, what I would try and do in this particular scenario is come up with a data point. Something that you can find either from your user base, whether it be the data about your app or the habits or what people are saying. So as an example, if we've seen inside of Chime that 42% of users that used to save have completely stopped saving because their excess cash flow has dried up, that would be the data point that I would lead with. And the value prop is Chime is a product that allows you to get $500 before your payday. There's no interest. There's no mandatory fees. It's $2 for an instant payout. No credit checks. And then, if there was a piece of using Chime helps users improve their credit as well of an average of 84 points. Those are all the value props you can talk about how it's helping people with this particular issue. So what I would do is if this was my job was to go and help drive sales, I would want to go find a list of financial reporters, people that focus on personal finance. And I would have a subject line, something along the lines of savings are down 42%, want the scoop. Hey, reporter, I've seen you focus on financial news, so I wanted to reach out to you with an opportunity. Our user data here at Chime shows 42% of users have completely stopped saving due to excess cash flow drying up, but we've built a feature that's helping them. We want to do an exclusive with one publication to feature this. Let me know if you're interested. And then if they respond yes, you can continue to go through, build out that story, direct users to your particular component. And you can obviously seasonalize this. So talking about the importance of having money and time for the holiday sales, et cetera, like this would be a really good use case. In addition, if people respond to this and say, no, I'm not interested, you've already built a relationship with them. You have something in mind. You could say, hey, no big deal. I'll reach out to you next time we have a story. And they're able to go through and you can start to have these relationships. So when it comes to higher cost times in the future, you already have outreach, you've developed a relationship with someone at a publication, and now you can kind of have that to go back and start to flex these as you experience these higher cost times in the future. So something that's pretty successful with those strategic PR efforts. Second thing I would look at doing is targeted CRO testing. So when I say this, this is not going and testing net new funnels. This is something about looking at if you have an app that requires some context, and I'm going to use this financial app because I've done this in the past. Most people that drive from ads to app store find that's their best cost per install. However, when you have an activation event on the back end, so as an example with FindTech, these people have to set up an account and put money into it. They call it funding an account. Well, that requires an installer to go through a process known as Know Your Customer KYC prior to funding their account. And it's pretty frustrating. It's a fair amount of work to do to go through that KYC process. So if you have angles that are performing, you can consider testing a tailored landing page that explains the use case prior to driving them to the app. And when I've done this in the past, we've seen that activation, that cost per activation drop by 60% because people said, hey, whatever the value prop of the app was, that's cool, but I don't want to go through this KYC process to get the result. Well, now if you put in this landing page that better explains what's going to take place, the opportunity and the benefits, you can see your active cost per activation event drop. And so as an example here, I grabbed this from Chime's Facebook ad library. Join time in 2 minutes and earn up to $350. So if you did this straight to the app, it may work fine. right? It may be something that takes place, but what they went and did is they had this ad drive to this landing page, which gave more context, explain how you earn the $350, and then they're pushed into the app. This is something that can make a massive difference. And once again, you can test your best ads, driving them through this landing page before they head to the app store. It can make a massive difference. All you'd have to do is leverage something like a Branch.io, AppsFlyer, et cetera, whatever it is that you're testing on the landing page to tie together web traffic with app installs. And this is an awesome way to go through and do this. So I'd highly recommend, if you have an app that's about utility, try add to landing page to install. And your cost per install is absolutely going to go up, but your activation rate is also likely to improve, which is going to make a difference and drop the real conversion that you care about. The final thing you can do is something that Ross and I try and talk about with everybody, regardless of whatever you're doing in high cost environments, is iterating proven angles and stockpiling them so you can launch them during higher cost seasons. So what's really important to understand is ad platforms want net new content. They don't like long-standing ads. They want new ads that get favorable delivery. So what Ross and I focus on doing with our team is stockpiling iterations of our top performing angles during better cost periods so we can launch them when costs get higher. So this is something you could start doing right now. We use an NAN automation to ingest the top performing angles and develop iterations for scripts and voiceovers. And I'll show you here in just a second. But our team has been doing this over the last couple months. We've been turning out 15 videos a week while only launching 6. So we have a surplus of 36 ads a month. Multiply that by 2 or 3 months, that's 72, over 100 creatives that can be launched in higher cost periods. And so very simple setup for how we do this. I can manually trigger this whenever we need something. It executes a SQL query, which runs against our ad performance. We look at the angles that are the top performers. We've set certain criteria. It's got links to Google Drive. NAN then downloads all of these files, sends them to ChatGPT, which transcribes them. Then we put them through an agent that has a very specific prompt saying we want scripts that follow this exact same structure, but we want them to be net new. We want them to be different, insert different details, etc. And then it will write that script, and then it kicks it over to 11 Labs via their API, and we get back a voiceover. All we have to do then is send that voiceover to our video editors. Creative strategy doesn't have to be involved with this process at all, so we've completely taken the iteration process off of our creative strategy team, and it makes a massive difference. So first thing I'll say, Ross and I are skeptical about anything that's just AI, just saying like, we need to prove that this works. And so we did this process. Angle 20 is a long-standing high performer for us. It has over $2.5 million of spend this year and $5 million dating back to the beginning of when we started to run this ad. In the time window I'm looking at, it spent about $300,000, but it started to burn out in August. We just saw the performance on it keep dropping. So we started this iteration process. And you see here, we have 3 ads that in this window started to ramp up. They were 17% of the volume in that last little bit, and they've continued to ramp. Ross, I believe that our highest spenders at like $3,000 a day now. So it's $90,000 a month replacing this. And we've just done this with our top performing angles over and over and over. So we can continue to replace as well as add to what's already working. Ross, can you just give an overview of what having this stockpile has made a difference for you?
When you're in the driving seat as a media buyer, we're always looking at performance, always trying to push out as much as we can, especially now in November. As you're going through it, your biggest challenge is making sure you get steady delivery. Having something like this, and I know you and I, when we started this, we were skeptical, like, is this even going to shake out? Like, we've been doing this, and just, for those viewing and listening to us, I'm really skeptical when it comes to we're not talking about color changes here and there. We're talking about a reskin, a complete remix of this thing that, we've got a winning angle. It's been recreated. We've got new visuals, and the stuff works. It genuinely works for getting something that's been produced very simply with low resource. And I can, very easily with confidence put it into our program, and seeing it get up to $3,000 a day on a unit is like, it's really awesome to have in my back pocket, that I know I can pull off the stockpile when I'm really under a crunch, put it back in there, and we've got like a 40% chance of having winners out of test seller. That's pretty high in terms of like net new. These are really awesome to have in the back pocket, get into your current mix, and you obviously don't want to be testing new stuff in high cost time. So these have been awesome to have.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so those are the three cost environment playbooks that I've got for you for the month of November. That strategic PR outreach can be really valuable for you now, as well as you continue to move into the future. Targeted CRO can add new life to old ads, and then proven angle iterations are going to continue to give you that new content that the platform craves, while it gives you the higher chance of success. Those are three things that you can do to make sure that you are maximizing your performance in the month of November and making up the delta that the cost environment is going to create. We hope this is valuable for you in the month of November, and we look forward to talking to you again to prepare for December. Talk soon. Thanks for watching this month's paid traffic forecast. Just by watching it, you and your team now know what to expect from your overall performance and the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to over the next 30 days. If you want to be this prepared every month, there's two things you can do. First, you can subscribe or follow our social channels so this information shows up in your feed at the beginning of every month. Second, if you want the information early, you can subscribe to our free list where you'll get the information delivered to your inbox a day ahead of time. If there's something you think we can do to improve our monthly update, just drop us a comment below and let us know what you think that is. And finally, if you're a business owner looking for someone who can help you develop an advertising ecosystem that produces more sustainable, predictable scale, make sure to head over to decyphered.com/start. On that page, you'll understand how our process works and the steps you can take to see if we might be a good fit to help you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.